Hey Channel Insiders, welcome back to Channel Insider Partner POV, your source for untapped opportunities and unfiltered opinions in the IT channel, all to help you make better business decisions. I'm your host, Katie Bavoso. My guest today is Jason Wright, CEO of Houston, Texas-based Avatar MSP. Jason is a longtime player in the channel, but he bought Avatar back in 2022 with the mission of bringing a true proactive perspective back to the managed services industry. And as you'll learn, there's virtually nothing Jason won't do for Avatar's customers. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me, Katie. Always so good to see you.
So good to see you too. We were just talking about prior to the recording that I was there when you announced you becoming a part of Avatar and purchasing the company. So I just think this is such a full circle moment. And it's just really great to see you doing so well and having so much success over there in Houston.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's been sort of a whirlwind experience. You know, you mentioned we're in Houston, right? So we're just coming out of the last couple of days, a huge flood event. One of a series of natural disasters that we're pretty prone to here in the city, which makes our business model that much more paramount, right, in the lives of small to medium business owners. A number of our clients were down or struggling to continue to run their businesses and so forth. So I say all that to say it's been a very busy week for us. But yes, 2 years since we bought the business, or I bought the business. And it's been no small task getting to where we're at today, but it's by the grace of God that we're here. It's been an amazing journey. We've more than quadrupled the growth of the business. When I bought it, I think we had 4 employees, and we just crossed over 20 employees, and we've grown our revenue and our service offerings quite a bit.
First of all, talking about the natural disaster events, and Jason, I hope everybody on your team is safe, and I'm so sorry to hear about that. But I got to tell you, I think that for many parts of the country, and maybe just for many people who don't experience something like that, IT can very much be affected by nature. We don't always think about it. We think about bad actors and threats and people who are intentionally coming to harm us cyber-wise, but we don't often think about how nature impacts our infrastructure. So I think you bring up such a great point there.
You know, we saw it with the pandemic, right? It was really the first, or maybe the greatest black swan event that we've had in years of my lifetime. And really that idea that we embody this, and it's in our tagline, this idea of corporate first responder. So when trouble arises, as it did in the pandemic, they needed to continue to operate their businesses. Everybody was sent home essentially overnight, and they were able to go home and plug their computers into the internet and be able to continue working and operate their businesses. The world continued to operate. And so on a more regional scale, yeah, we deal with that here in Houston. We had, leading up to the pandemic, we had 4 years of historic flooding. Even back then when Hurricane Harvey hit, you know, we were trekking servers and network equipment down 19 sets of stairs in buildings that had no power, no elevator access. We were pulling equipment out of, by boat out of certain buildings for our customers. And we were going to do whatever it took to get their businesses back up and running. And we did that. And those customers became very endeared to us, and they were customers for life. And so we have brought that same spirit over to Avatar Managed Services.
Jason, there's support, and then there's running up and down flights of stairs during a flood in a building with no power support. So hats off to you, my friend, and everybody that helped make that happen and get you all through that event. I want to make sure I take a step back here so that we can get to know Avatar a little bit more just as a business. And obviously you're an MSP. It is so intrinsic in everything that you do and every message that you put out there. But like you said, you really like to be that corporate first responder. You're making sure that you're running a proactive approach with your business. Can you expand on that a little bit for me? I think we've all heard proactive within the channel, but how do you think we've kind of fallen short of that really truly being proactive in this space up until this point? And can you elaborate for me on how exactly you're defining being proactive as a company?
Yeah, I think what's lost on MSPs is they really don't document the journey enough with their clients. What are they going to expect? What are the touch points? On what cadences are we meeting? And what are the outcomes we should expect, right? The market for a decade now, a decade and a half, has gone in and sort of said, look, we're going to give you unlimited support at a fixed cost. We're going to bundle all the tools, but they don't appropriately build an effective roadmap or a strategy in terms of how they're going to service the client through the life cycle of that engagement, right? And I think we have really captured the essence of that at Avatar Managed Services. So with us, what it looks like is we're our customers' guide on their journey to maturity. And everything we do is done in the interest of moving them along that chasm in that journey to maturity life cycle. So initially it starts with onboarding, where we get our tools deployed and we get their environments documented so that we have the tribal knowledge of what we're working with. And then we very quickly move into an optimization really a stabilization period where we're setting up preventive maintenance, proactive monitoring, establishing knock, and then even moving into sort of optimization. We're building or deploying telemetries and scripting in the environment, automating what we can. We're establishing baseline core processes for them, and having already self-assessed where they are at on that capability maturity spectrum, then using that as a baseline in terms of measuring productivity along that journey, right? Again, we spoke already about high touch, high response. So just being there, that corporate first responder, answering the phone quickly within one or two rings, always a live body, 24/7 support. That's really the foundation of any good support engagement that any MSP should employing as part of their go-to-market strategy. So you have high touch, high response, you onboard the customer, you stabilize the customer, and then usually 91 or 120 days within the engagement is where that engagement will shift from a reactive scope to more of a proactive scope. And we come in, and that's where we're doing more of what we call technology alignment mapping, alignment to best practices. So the client is somewhere down here in best practices up here. So how do we map that journey or alignment to best practice over time? And so we have a series of scheduled cadences. Some might call them quarterly business reviews or strategic business reviews. Leading up to that, we'll run compliance frameworks, typically a CIS controls or a NIST, maybe even a SOC 2 Type 2 framework, which essentially flushes out or materializes as a gap assessment and says, this is where you have risk, Mr. Customer. This is how we rank that risk in terms of major, moderate, and minor. And from that, we build a strategic roadmap and effectively build a punch list of action items on what needs to be addressed or what's high priority in their environment. And so that's really mapping the journey. And from that, you can do some asset management, asset tracking for them. You can help them with budget and planning initiatives so that they know when to plan for certain expenditures, whether capital or operational expenditures. And so that's really the essence of, I think, the next generation MSP.
And Jason, I have to wonder how that all is impacted by the hybrid work environment that we're seeing today. We're distributed. We can work anywhere at any time. But for you, when you purchased Avatar, you went in there in 2022 at the height of us figuring out what exactly hybrid work was. So how does all of this get impacted by the model that we're working under right now with the anywhere, anytime workforce?
I think the business isn't any more or less complex than it was 10 years ago, but the priorities have shifted, right? So our focus is pivoted away from infrastructure and hardware, more towards managing workloads in the cloud and depending on partnerships with our vendors to secure those environments, right? So when you think about the hybrid workplace, if I go back a decade ago in our last MSP, we had twice as many, maybe three times as many system administrators in that business because they were managing on-premise data centers. The number of servers within client environments was a lot greater in terms of quantity. Right now, you fast forward to today, those workloads live in the cloud, whether it's AWS or Azure or third-party SaaS applications. So from an MSP standpoint, it's less hands on deck required to manage those environments. But at the same time, in terms of responsibility, uh, assessing risk posture, and overall the responsibility or liability placed on the MSP has certainly grown, right? Because of the ever evolving cyber threat landscape, right? So if, again, thinking back, 10 years ago, you really needed antivirus, malware, you needed remote access, whatever you enabled on the firewall. And that was your security program. Now, fast forward today, you need IDS and IPS and deep packet inspection on the router. And then you've got to have email security platform and MFA. You need a complex EDR or MXDR solution. You need a good security awareness and training program. You have to do some complex things with backups. And then you sort of, if you're looking at defense in depth, you're now layering in more advanced security services like SIM and security orchestration, vulnerability management, SASE, zero trust network access, you name it, right? And so helping customers be able to navigate what's required based on industry mandates or just in terms of how they do business. And let me dispel another myth there too. Everybody talks about compliance, 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 right? Most of our businesses, small or mid, still don't fall under any particular compliance mandate, but still in terms of best practice and overall responsibility to the client, that's what our technology alignment mapping process does, is it uses those frameworks, even though they don't have to attest to a certain framework. We use it as a means to make them a more mature, safer environment, right? It's this idea of left of boom, right of boom, right? Right of boom, obviously being what happens post incident and how are you responding and mitigating the consequences of the breach. But what about left of boom, right? What are we doing to establish a good security policy, to make sure that there's a defined incident response plan in place, that there's a good disaster recovery plan in place? And then what sort of vulnerabilities are we monitoring and managing for to prevent an attack from ever happening in the first place? Because the expense and reputational damage is far greater if you're talking right of boom.
You specialize in those SMB and mid-market customers, and I really want to talk about them for a minute. First of all, let's get to know them. What do they typically do, Jason? What verticals do you typically find your customers serving, and how does that impact your day-to-day as a company when you're considering the services that they provide to their own customers?
So we really segment our demographic or our ideal client in a number of key areas. So firstly, we're in Houston, right? So energy, oil, and gas is still king here. We live in the biotech, healthcare mecca of the world. In terms of patient care, we're the largest biotech center in the world, right? Everybody comes here for cancer treatment and so forth. But some of the same verticals are still strong for us here as they would be in any other vertical: industrial, manufacturing, other professional services firms like legal, financial, accounting firms, construction, professional service firms. So we sort of check the boxes on all those. But then we also look at some of the intangible qualifiers. So do they have drowning man issues, right? Is there pain or some sort of impending event that's driving an IT decision? And for us personally, we're not the cheapest guys on the block. We're looking for clients who appreciate value add, right? So we're looking for customers who have sort of suffered through one or two bad partnerships. They're in a bad marriage, so to speak. And so they're looking for somebody who's going to come in and be that sort of guide to maturity for them and help them along in ways that previous companies haven't. In fact, over my shoulder here, you can't see off camera, but we actually have a dartboard here in our office with a list of all the competitors that we've taken clients from, and the guys occasionally go in there and throw darts, and the dartboard just keeps filling up and up and up. The third thing we do is we segment in terms of customer size or employee size. And we really have simplified our product strategy. We have two offerings. We have Avatar Advantage, which is sort of our fully baked offering, everything in the kitchen sink. And that's traditionally designed for, say, the sub 100 employee, sub 75 employee marketplace, where they're not going to have any IT resources or IT leadership. But where we really see the future and where we have seen a large share of our growth is in that sort of middle market space, north of 100 users up to 1,000 users. And that's primarily because those IT leaders, the CIOs, the CTOs, the VPs of IT that operate within those companies have the same problems I have as an IT leader. And that is trying to keep pace with the evolving threat landscape as it relates to cyber threats, and also keeping pace with vendor management, right? There's been an absolute explosion or proliferation of tools. Going back to the point I made a few minutes ago, there were, maybe 4, 5, 6 tools we needed to run our MSP business 10 years ago. Now, I think the latest average is somewhere between 20 and 24 tools, because we're at the intersection of so many evolving tech trends. So it's a great time to be in IT, and it will be forever because of the way I think wars will be fought in the future is going to be done on a cyber warfare spectrum. So anyways, the middle market, we really took a gamble in proof of concept and offering and brought it out about 12 to 18 months ago. And I've just had tremendous success in selling into those companies because, again, they have the same problems I have. The only difference is I've already built a platform and muscle memory around how to solve those problems. And so let me make this one final point, right? When you think about the IT budget spend, right, it typically falls into 3 buckets. You have sort of down here is the run side of the IT budget, keeping the day-to-day going, the lights on. And then you have the grow side of IT budgets, typically related to new technologies and applications. And then you have the transform side of IT, which, if you break that down, transformative tech usually gets maybe 10%, or it's even a discretional budget line item. And it gets ignored largely because you spend so much time in the run and the grow side of managing and maintaining your IT operations. And so what we've effectively done is brought an offering to market that establishes credibility and says to these mid-market IT leaders, hey, look, we've already done this. We've got all these tools. We've built a posture and muscle memory around these tools. We can deliver that to you as a platform. And then we run our technology alignment management program to help you with the future state planning, budget, and so forth. And so you, as the IT leader, can now focus on what are those new horizons we haven't been able to address in the business, or what are those transformative technologies that we can bring into the business that are going to be revenue generating, right? And even the IT spectrum has changed, right? Because the IT leaders are no longer coming from necessarily technical backgrounds. They're business people. They're coming from the business in different lines of the business. And so they think differently, right? These are people who grew up with technology. They didn't need to go to school to learn it. So that's how we're impacting the market. But the mid-market for us is really the future at Avatar.
We're just getting warmed up. Come back on Tuesday for part 2 of my interview with Jason Wright. Thanks to Jason for joining me, and thank you for watching or listening. Check out all episodes of Channel Insider Partner POV on channelinsider.com or watch on YouTube at channelinsider_news and trends. You can also check us out as a podcast on your preferred podcast listening platform. Come on over to X or LinkedIn and connect with Channel Insider there, or with me at Katie Bavoso. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Bavoso, and I'll see you next time.